From affordable housing in Charleston County to the latest on 526, I talk one-on-one with Charleston County Councilman Rev. Dr. Kylon Middleton for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Rev. Dr. Kylon Middleton, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Good to be here.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. What's new? What's now, Charleston County Council?
Well, we're definitely pushing for affordable housing. There are a lot of different things going on, but the affordable housing issue is number one, at least for me, because we're up against a bond referendum question, apparently, that we're still trying to work out. And I think we have a couple of additional special sessions that we're going to have in order to try to hash the language out for the bond referendum. But I'm confident that at least we'll have a unified council pushing forward for the priority of affordable housing in Charleston County.
What is that ideal language for affordable housing here in Charleston County?
Well, it's not necessarily ideal language per se, because when you look at the nature of affordable housing, we need to, come up with terms that we all can agree on. We say affordable, some people say workforce, some people say attainable, that sort of thing. So we're working through all of those pieces. As it relates to the bond referendum question, I thought that the two-part question that was presented to us on Tuesday was too thin and mirrored those questions that were put on the bond referendum ballot the last time that narrowly failed. And certainly I was not on council the last time that those questions were presented, and I refused to be on council and sit and let those type questions go to the public or to the voters without having specificity. So my main objective and prayerfully councils is to provide the voters with a plan, as it relates to what we intend to do with these funds to support the housing crisis in Charleston County. And so I think across the spectrum, to include, Charleston Realtors Association, Metro Chamber of Commerce, Charleston Area Justice Ministries, all sorts of groups, have band together, unlikely suspects, to declare that there is an affordable housing crisis or a housing crisis in Charleston County that we need to come together to address. Republicans can't live in Charleston County, just like Democrats can't live in Charleston County, based on the soaring prices of houses and real estate here in Charleston County. So that's something that we must address. And I think through the bond referendum question, having more specificity so that we can, lay out, who, what, where, when, and how, this is going to occur, that would give the voters a lot more as they contemplate this question, as they make their decisions. I do feel that when, a more an expanded definition and or an expanded explanation or plan as to what we intend to do with the funds would probably help, especially those advocacy groups that are selling this ahead of the referendum.
Where exactly will the funds go to first?
Right. So that's what we're working on. We're looking at, when we talk about housing and we talk about an affordable housing trust, there are multiple, sort of components, contained. It could be a revolving loan fund. It could be second soft mortgages. It could be whatever. I mean, there's so many different, it could be, set asides to purchase land, because of course, God is not making any more of that. And so there are several different components that comprise an affordable housing, trust, if that's what we're calling it, so that we can begin to anticipate what's going to come first, second, third, fourth, or whatever, those sequence of, I think all of the events will be equally as important. There are other municipalities, there are other local governments that are already doing this. Wake County, North Carolina. Sometimes people don't want to compare themselves to other people, but in America, everybody's living. We have communities across the country, and some of whom are thriving and doing well. And so it pays for us to see, well, why is Wake County in North Carolina doing so well? Why has Greenville, Spartanburg area started to boom here in South Carolina relative to addressing, affordability as it relates to individuals who are, being even attracted to work in different places, sectors in that area? You must marry the housing with the, the bustling industry that we're trying to attract. We cannot have Mercedes, Volvo, Boeing, all of these companies that we continue to try to allure here to Charleston County and not have places for their workers to live. They can't live in Ridgeville or Orangeburg County and drive all the way in. I mean, we have to anticipate that these individuals would need to be working, in a reasonable sort of travel distance from where they intend to where they intend to live, so that they can have at least a good quality of life. When you get off work, you don't want to be stuck in traffic for 2 or 3 or 4 hours going and coming, and you could be using that time with your family and developing relationships that are healthy outside of your work situation.
And I know a lot of people, like you mentioned, don't like to compare, cities and counties and whatnot. But when it comes to the affordable housing crisis, Rev, how do you compare Charleston County to another county that's dealing with this right now?
Right. So again, I said, looking at Greenville and Spartanburg, those areas in South Carolina, because I know sometimes if you talk about places outside of South Carolina, people get equally offended. Well, there are places in South Carolina that are doing this relatively well. It has to be a priority. The city of Charleston, and so we don't have to go to Greenville, Spartanburg. We can come right home, right in the county, sort of boundaries. And the city of Charleston has made that a priority, and they're doing exceptionally well as it relates to prioritizing affordability and bringing more affordable housing products, online, for individuals to who are like firefighters, police officers, hospitality workers, those type individuals who could be able to live in the city, specifically on the peninsula, and be able to, go to work, in the same community in which they live.
What affordable housing products do you hope Charleston County will bring online soon?
Right. So, I live West Ashley, right? And so, Glen McConnell is widening. We have all of this development happening right over here in West Ashley. And when you look at my district has now changed, it's more of a West Ashley district as opposed to a North Charleston district, although, my home has always been West Ashley when it was even predominantly a North Charleston seat. But here, West Ashley, even as you look at Glen McConnell Parkway, Bees Ferry Road, there are dense developments going up. I mean, high rises, 300 apartments going into these places. Certainly, we have to look at the infrastructure. The old Ryan's, that's in my district now, right there on Highway 61, the Ryan's Steakhouse, which is now going to be apartments, on Bees Ferry Road. When you look on this end, more apartments coming up. And so when you, talk about where these products are going, they're going up. There's not enough land. I'm like, where can they put something else? And when I turn around, they have like 500, kind of apartments in one little, tract of land that you think that nothing really could be developed there. But they're finding creative ways. The architects are certainly earning, their money in this season as well. But those affordable products are coming online. I think municipalities are taking this seriously, to include the city of Charleston, North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, and others. Even a municipality like Lincolnville, is investing in affordable in housing products. Coming in their area. And so when we look at Johns Island, James Island, look at the town of Ravenel, Hollywood, places that people never would, normally, kind of put in the mix of all of this type of development. They are prime. Red Top, which is now in my district, all of those areas are being developed. And so when you talk about where they're going in all of those places, and they have to go in all of those places because, again, on the peninsula, we don't have land enough. Of course, we do still have 995 Morrison. I dare not even talk about that on this broadcast, but certainly I'm sure you'll bring it up. But that is a place. We don't have any, place. I'm from the east side, just like you. And when I look on the east side, I don't see any other place where there are tracts of land to be developed. And we have 995 Morrison. And I still feel that it should be, some sort of mixed, sort of use facility, but also to include affordable components, to that development as well.
What affordable housing components could be there right now?
Well, again, we have a plan for that. Again, that we put a deed restriction on it, right, to memorialize or at least keep it at this point on the table for affordability. Everything across the street from it, no one can afford. And so when I look at the rent prices up and down, Morrison Drive, East Bay Street, on in and around the area of 995, the prices have to come down. So when you look at, like new developments that are being done by the city, like Archer, the Archer School project, those affordable housing that are coming, Grace Homes, these types of places, surely we have to consider that, type of project that would bolster individuals who, make a good salary, but cannot max themselves out just paying rent.
What is the affordable? Well, what is the typical rent in your district right now?
Well, I don't know what the typical rent is. I've been looking around, because of course I own my house, so I don't,
Right.
And I definitely, pray and always advocate for individuals who rent. I've seen rent prices, go from, 15, 17, 2000. I've seen prices like, especially in areas that we just discussed,
Right.
3,000 plus upward. And then when I talk to landlords and others, and they say, well, this is supposing that college students are going to have like 4 or X number of individuals sharing that rent, but they're renting these things by the room. And so when you talk about a space or a dwelling that has 4, a common area, a common living area, and they have 4 suite-like apartments, where you have your own bedroom, bathroom, at least that, your own bedroom and bathroom, but you share a common living area, you share a common kitchen, that kind of thing. But they are charging them per bedroom. And so they're not, aggregate, spending $3,000, just for the total apartment. In many cases, they're paying $1,000 or $1,500 for that one room, and then to share that, common space. And so that one little unit may rack up $5,000. And so I've been studying, rent prices. And as we talk about, bond referenda and, these raising taxes and this sort of thing, we have to be very careful, because landlords then pass that on to renters. And so when we look at the hit for, individuals who own homes, it may not necessarily be a big hit, for those individuals who own homes, but those who rent, their rent will go up even the more. And I think that is unfair in some cases for landlords to pass that on. But those are areas that we'll have to look at to make certain that individuals, especially those who are renting apartments by choice, because some people choose to rent. They could own homes, but they don't want to because they may be retired. They may be, newly, here and trying to figure it out. And whatever the case is, or individuals who are, just starting their lives or establishing their lives, like my son, he's renting, and he needs to rent because he's not going to live at home. And so, in order to get their lives on track, but those prices need to be, at least flatlined a bit, so that we are not competitively pricing ourselves out to the extent that certain people can't live here.
Where are these prices flatlined in the county per se?
I don't think that they're flatlined yet at all,
Okay.
because we have a market-driven. I'm saying they need to be. They're not flatlined because we have a market-driven economy. We don't have enough products, housing products, not affordable housing products, period. And therefore, it's the old, law of supply and demand. You don't have enough. We have low supply, high demand. You're going to pay, and so we need to change that equation.
Now, how many people in your district, Rev, are actually renting, and how many actually own their homes?
I do not know that number, but I will find that out. I don't know, we just went through redistricting. We're dealing with, this whole issue of affordability. I'm learning the new district, right? Because I mastered my old district, but that district has changed. And so I'm learning, although I'm from here, right? So it's not like I have to learn. It's a learning curve, but, again, it's a new district. I don't know my district as their council person. I am knowing them now as their council person as I'm serving them, but the unique community issues that are indigenous to some of these, like Maryville, Ashleyville, West Oak Forest, to even places like South Windermere and others. I mean, all in my district is extremely diverse, even still, and so we have various needs, and so I'm still assessing, still meeting with people, still learning the nuances, because I have some very old settled communities, which mean, when I say old, meaning communities that have been here, since Charleston, right? And then we have some very newer communities, but at the same token, all of the needs are unique and different. So I'm going around. I'm having a town hall next week on the 19th, and so I'm trying to do my part at least engaging those who are not only in the district but throughout the whole county around certain issues, but definitely moving around the district in order to ascertain the needs of those who are now in District 6 who may not have been before.
So what are the unique community needs right now, that is?
Well, there are many unique community needs. So I've mentioned Maryville, Ashleyville. That's a very old, historic Black community, and the city of Charleston has done some very creative things in order to revitalize that community. And so we see a lot of good things going on, but the infrastructure around them has not really caught up. And so whereby there are wins that they're experiencing, there are also challenges that the county can help, as it relates to traffic intersection improvements, as it relates to sidewalks and, streets, working with DOT and that sort of thing with mitigating some of those infrastructure issues. Flooding, still being an issue everywhere around South Carolina, Charleston, the Southeast, America, based on climate change, and climate change is real. And so that's one community. Looking at a community like Red Top, I just had a meeting with them about 2 weeks ago, and they have, they're trying to preserve a park, the Red Top Park out there, and they're trying to do some things to stimulate preservation of their community at large. They have a couple of churches that have gone through the county's historic preservation process, and now the entire Red Top community is trying to go through that process. And so we've been working with them because that's a developer's dream, Red Top, but they have a lot of flooding concerns that we have been, I was actually working with them on those concerns with Miss Johnson before getting the district, and then it was handed to me. So I at least knew, some of those concerns because I was working in tandem with her. I have family members from Red Top, so I've been going there for years, and so just working with them to trust the county, staff enough to sign, permissions and waivers, for variances and for encroachment issues in order to fix, some of the issues that they have at least identified. And those are a couple of communities, but, there are unique communities. Of course, I still have Grand Oaks, Bolton Landing, all of these communities in and around Beast Ferry Road, Providence Commons, and so the 526 idea, and then also the Glenn McConnell expansion continues to create anxiety around people's livability.
I'm going to get to that in a second, as you know. But where are the variances and the encroachment issues right now in District 6, besides obviously Red Top?
Right. So I mentioned Red Top. Surely, those are issues of trust. And when you talk about widening ditches, so something as simple as widening a ditch, that requires somebody to give them permission because, the county, based on, just the width and or the parameters needed in order to make that happen, they have to have a certain amount of your property that they would be able to make those projects realized. And sometimes, people are feeling like, well, if I sign this, I'm signing my whole property away. You're not necessarily signing your entire property away. When we find those flooding issues, that's where we have those historic, especially in those historically Black communities, those trust issues that we need to kind of break through those barriers. Now, of course, we did have amidst or adjacent to this Glenn McConnell project, we just approved $1.6 million to as a companion with the city on a drainage project that would be right behind Magwood, Charlie Hall Boulevard, et cetera. That's been a historic, sort of area, flood prone area, but that entire basin would receive some relief if we since we have now agreed, to enter that project. So those are a few areas that are red flag areas. Of course, I used to have shadow moss, which continues. I don't have them anymore, but my heart is still there, and I'm still serving. Along with Brantley Moody, we're working collaboratively on all of these issues because they're not, again, where district lines and or redistricting has occurred. We're still all members of council, so we have to work together in order to make certain that these projects are priorities in those districts and in those areas.
And I want to get you, I'm running out of time, but I know they're going to give you 10:40 as a time of it, but I want to get you back on in the fall to talk more about that Glen McConnell project. But let me move forward to 526. As you know, the cost of the 526 extension over Johns Island is now $2.5 billion. The South Carolina Department Secretary, Christy Hall, as you know, says the previous estimate for the extension is outdated, and a lot of things contributed to the new price tag for this project. So what are the current market conditions for construction in Charleston County?
So, Secretary Hall did come and she presented that to us and also presented some very unique, creative ideas around funding that could work. And so, that made me a little bit more interested in hearing, because when I think about $2 billion, I can't even compute that in my mind. And thinking of how that cost being passed on to taxpayers would be certainly something that I would have to think very hard about. But I'm for 526 completion. I am definitely for it. And when the secretary came and provided us with sort of a menu of potential opportunities to fund it, to include in phases, that became a more palatable project for us to consider, especially looking at the environmental impact and the conservation issues that may be associated with it, and also hopefully, not necessarily losing too many properties or homes in the process.
Now, when you look at those market conditions right now for construction, what are they for this particular project?
So again, everything astronomically has gone up. I just built a new house, myself, and materials, the supply chain issues. Our church is under renovation,
Right.
Mount Zion AME Church. Everything has gone up, and so what prices existed 3 years ago, all of those have gone up, based on, it could be from paint to, materials, period. And also shipping and getting them here. So when looking at today's market climate, as it relates to building and construction, we cannot compare it. We can't. And I've tried to, in my mind, freeze that, because sometimes you can say, oh, $2 billion. Well, $2 billion in 2022 is not $2 billion in 2015 or whatever the case is. And so we have to be broad in our understanding, and we have to be realistic, recognizing the times in which we live.
Now, you talk about those properties that may be disrupted by this. What are the real estate costs for the alignment of this particular 526 project?
So again, we have looked at right-of-way acquisitions. We've looked at those properties. They have presented those. I've been extremely strong on equity and being a champion for individuals, regardless of who they are, that may be in the wake of these, developments that may lose their property. And there are some homes that will be impacted. And so those have been presented to us. Some of those properties are vacant at this time, which, was more palatable to me, and the families were willing to sell it. And so that, certainly did not displace, somebody who's currently living in a home and doesn't know where they're going to go. And as it relates to the county's process, when entering those levels of negotiations, they will receive, fair compensation for their property. So that gives me great hope as well. So if those families are in agreement with that, and if they are certainly if they are fine with that, then I will be as well. Now I do know that historically these type projects go through certain types of communities. Like I-26 when it came through,
Right.
got it and decimated Black communities, and certainly I know that historical story all too well. And so I'm looking at that very closely, because if 526, even the thought of it, specifically does that only to certain types of communities, then that's something that I'm definitely not supporting. But I certainly am working toward making sure that we go through all those issues. On the Highway 41 issue in 17, I was on the front line and made certain that people's, businesses, homes, and whatever, and all of those plans changed. If people were honest, they can tell you it was me. I said no, and the consultants went back and they worked through and with council and with property owners and people and designers, and they reconfigured whereby individuals, especially Black people and or minority people, did not lose in that deal.
Yeah, and I love North Mount Pleasant and those historic communities out there. But let me ask you, what are the real estate costs right now for that area near this proposed 526 project?
So I don't know that answer at this time, Quintin. I would need to go back and look, because with real estate, like even in my personal neighborhood, houses that were 400,000 are now 600,000, and so the appraised values are going up. I don't know currently. It used to be, I would say specifically where some of those homes are on that little piece of Johns Island, on a part of James Island. Those homes, used to be probably in the $200,000 dollar area, maybe some may have been less than that. And so today, those areas may be a whole lot more based on just, what's going on Johns Island, especially, near that, those interchanges, they're developing more. And as you put more houses and more development, those values do go up, as just a collateral, sort of consequence of being near houses that are more expensive than yours. And so, and that's just the reality.
Now, with the 526 project, Rev, what other expenditures do you all foresee?
So they rolled out a pretty detailed budget, that was inclusive of the entire project. So I don't foresee necessarily any external costs that would not necessarily already be contemplated in that 526 budget. Now, certainly internally in the county, if then, we had to kind of, invest or, put in more than what we have budgeted for. Now, that may be something that we may have to then kind of realign our budget priorities to make certain that our investment component, matches whatever that formula of all of these different areas to make up that number that Secretary Hall presented. But that would be the only area I would see that would change, because the project itself, as has already been, we got that $2 billion price tag, which could be less than $2 billion once, the project is actually bidded out and we actually see what the actual cost would be. These are just proposed projected amounts right now. And so once we see what those actual costs are, we actually could save. There was a large portion embedded in that budget for legal fees, because they anticipated the lawsuits that would come. Well, if there are not so many lawsuits, then those are billions of dollars that could be. But they embedded that, even in the cost. So I thought that budget, I got great comfort in that budget that was presented, because it was inclusive of the entire project.
Okay, what is the county's investment formula for 526?
So again, based on I don't have those numbers, and I wish I did. I do have them, and I do know. Now that part I do know. We have a specific part, and so I can't tell you. I can, if you had told me ahead of time, I would have had that number for you. I do have that, and we discussed that very robustly when Secretary Hall came, and all of that is a part of information that I've received, and I have, and it's not private information. It's public information, so you can go on the website and certainly extract that.
Now, what preliminary work, Rev, do you all expect before this project is actually shovel ready?
Right. So they're doing all of the preliminary work right now to include, assessing and going through due diligence and anticipating, what those, kind of losses, not losses, but, the property, sort of acquisition
Right.
sort of thing, right away acquisitions. They're doing all of those preliminary things now in order to align the project, also making certain that, all of the players locally are aligned so that if there are additional federal dollars that can also be leveraged to help with this project, especially through, the Secretary Buttigieg's programs, then we would be a candidate. So they're doing a lot of work in order to make 526 the expansion a reality.
Now, what are those local players, and we know all of them, are they aligned with this project thus far with the county?
Well, everybody has their own, opinion. So, I mean, people are changing daily. People who were for it one time are against it now. Even on council, municipalities, who are in and around the project area are also discussing this. It's a big project. And so I don't know the outcome. I don't know, based on all of the stakeholders, who's going to do what or how. I do know that we should be on the same page, because as the federal government is looking specifically at, local leaders and lawmakers and politicians, how we're talking about the project, that certainly does help or hurt their perception of the communal desire for it. But I think, soon, and it will be soon, especially since this is kind of before us, we're all going to have to come together, municipalities, the state, local, the county government, to decide for sure where we are on 526.
And before I forget this, I know I got so much on my mind right now, but let me ask you, have the bids been going out for this particular project thus far?
Say it again.
Have the bids going out for this particular project thus far?
I don't know where they are in the bidding. I
Okay.
do know that, they have already projected, what certain categorical costs would be. And I think they are, some of this is being, driven by consultants and through, the state infrastructure, yeah, anyway, and
Yeah.
so when we receive reports, then I know. But
Yes.
yeah.
Now, you just mentioned that already, but how many bids for this particular project, Rev, would actually be ideal to drive the prices of 526 down?
So we've seen that now the secretary did say, and I guess they are putting it out for bids, because she was saying to us that it would have been advantageous for us to, send it out in parts, because if you send out the entire project, then we will have less or no bidders, for the project. So what they have seen successful would be parts of, road projects where, they would have a, robust number of individuals who will come, or companies who will come and bid on those projects. Right now, I don't know where they are on that, but in our local government, we are where we would normally see just a simple road project like Glen McConnell, or I say simple, but complex on so many different levels. I mean, we're not seeing the types of bidders we normally would get just for a road, a normal, just one little stretch of road project. So, we have issues. I mean, people, workers have decided that they're not doing certain jobs anymore, and companies are short, and on across the board, we're getting less bids. And so I don't know what 526 an ideal number would be, but I do know that in the industry across the board, we're seeing less people bidding and competing for these projects.
Now, how many bids have actually dropped, in the past 2 years for Charleston County?
So again, I don't have that number specifically, but I hear it all the time, particularly as it relates to our planning and zoning department, traffic and transportation. These road projects that we're having all around the county, that where we normally would have 5, plus bidders for a project, we have 2 and in some cases zero. And so that's why the county itself is staggering even some of the projects that we are putting out for bid instead of putting all out at one time. I think we just received a report on this on Tuesday. Instead of putting all out at one time, they put one out and see how that goes, and then they put another one out, in a certain staggered time frame, and put another one out to inspire competition.
What does that competition look like now?
So again, based on the industry standards and based on the market and based on, just who we have working, the competition is sometimes you have one person and you say, well, why are you all always using, this one company? It may have been the only company. And I am certainly not one for sole source procurement, but my goodness, in some cases, we only have one that's presenting themselves. Now, I can say in the area of our home project, our Charleston, we're focusing on fixing up these homes for our elderly citizens.
Cool.
We have then opened that process up for additional contractors to come in, and those on those levels of contractors that don't normally get big county projects, and that has become a little bit more attractive for those who normally would not be in those procurement areas.
What will be the future procurement areas for Charleston County?
So I don't know what the future procurement areas will be, but we're looking at many projects. We have these scattered sites. Now, certainly we're not going to be in the housing business, but we do have these scattered sites that needs to be fixed up. So that's a part of, that sort of vision and focus. And so those are procurement items, looking at hiring a construction manager. That's on the county's website right now, and looking at, overarching companies that will be able to, cast a vision, for not only fixing those sites up, but across the county in various areas to include our more rural areas where there are home repairs for individuals that need to be done. I think up to $30,000 individuals can apply right now for grants on the county website. Go to the county website, charlestoncounty.org right now, especially if you're a senior citizen and you can roofs, roof and floors. I know that much. And so those items can be applied for up to $30,000 per household through the county.
Now, going back to 526, Councilman, what could you justify the county building the 526 extension with the climate change resolution that passed that you actually brought to council?
Right. I actually brought that climate change resolution to council, and it has an equity component to it. And I do feel that, it is important for us to recognize that even poor people need, mitigation, that are, that's equitable to include environmental impacts that affect their communities. A road like 526, again, not decimating historic communities, but certainly adding mobility and access across the region. So 526 would then enable individuals from the islands and wherever, to access various parts of the Tri-County area with ease without, having to be, stuck. I wouldn't want to say stuck, but
Right.
having transportation barriers. We can then also, include bus routes and or our low country rapid transit, which may be coming, connectivity to those areas if then we had 526. I know your time is short, but I also wanted to say that when looking at, making a justification for it, the formula presented by Secretary Hall gives me great hope, because it's not Charleston County only in our citizens fitting that bill. There is a robust engagement across sectors to make that happen.
And I'm going to talk to you more about all of this soon. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it here on Quintin's
I
Close-Ups.
look forward to coming back. Just
Yes.
let me know when.
Okay.